I think really at the end of the day, they each have their place, Max.
Yeah, one in the trash, one in the building.
Extra strong Roman concrete.
Fully hydraulic.
Structural welded connections.
It's the
Structural engineering podcast.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Structural Engineering Podcast. My name is Max.
And my name's Zach.
And this week, we're talking about nails versus screws. This has been going on I know nails have been around for 5,000 years. And screws, I'm sure, at least 10. But
whatever.
We'll get there. You got anything for us, Zach?
You know, I actually have an interesting kind of story that happened over the weekend that I kind of wanted to talk about and see your opinion on.
Is this a sad story?
No, not at all.
Oh, I don't know about this one.
No, you have absolutely no clue what we're about to talk about. It's a little bit of something interesting. I'm just curious of what is Max's initial first thoughts with these comments or with this story, and just kind of go from there. So, my sister and her husband were in Japan for the last week, right? And we've talked about Japan in the past. We've been discussing resiliency a lot. We talked about their building code. Japan just had one of the largest or worst typhoons that they've had since like the 50s. So here's my question to you. It was about a 90 to 100 mile per hour wind event. There was also a 5.2 earthquake.
What?
Same time.
Really?
Yeah. The only reason I know this is I was up at like 4:30 in the morning, and my sister started texting me and was saying that the skyscraper they're in was moving. And I said, well, of course, like it's a big windstorm. Of course, it's going to be moving a lot. And why wouldn't, it's good that the building's moving. And she was like, it's just kind of freaky. And then while I was texting her, the whole room started shaking differently than the building was swaying. And she goes, I don't know what's going on, but the room just shook. And I was like, that's weird. And I didn't think about it at the time, but I later looked it up because, they have so many earthquakes. And at the same time, they had a wind event and an earthquake concurrently. No structures failed. No structures had issues. But it blew my mind, Of course, my sister's texted me and was like, is everything okay? And I'm like, it's totally fine. But what do you think about that, Max?
Man, that's the odds are very low, huh? It's small enough. I guess you'd still say it's small enough that you would have a design event. What was the typhoon wind speeds? They're fast, I'm sure. Doesn't matter.
I believe they're around 100 mile per hour wind speeds.
Jeez. Okay.
But so I looked it up. They only designed the peak 3-second gusts. I believe it was 3-second gusts. I looked up the maps for Japan. Where they were, they only designed for 108 mile per hour winds.
Wow. So they were pushing it.
Now, the thing is, no one needs to quote this because I couldn't tell you if it was ASD, LRFD, like what it was. It was like 47 meters per second. Convert that to miles per hour, and it was about
the design.
Is the design, yes.
Yeah.
And we already discussed kind of how they come up with the design level earthquake loading. But it just made me think. And so I did a little research. Yeah, I want to hear more of what you think, but I did a little research about this in Japan, and pretty much any tower in Japan, this was a 40, 50 story building, is performance-based design with objectives higher than what the code limits are, right? So it definitely has more capacity in a sense than a traditional building with the building code would have. That idea of resiliency again. What do you think, Max?
I don't know. I don't know what I think. That's just wild that two events occurred at the same time. I think the probability that someone could very easily tell you, someone much smarter than me, but that is absolutely wild. I mean, it wasn't a design earthquake event and it wasn't a design wind event, but it was sure close. If we were talking, if there was a design wind speed of 109, let's call it allowable. So we're actually close to what it is, right? And then, maybe we were 2/3 of the design earthquake. Like there's more built in there, right? They'd have to be essentially in resonance, right?
Right.
The earth has to move against the way the wind blows at the same time. It's just so unlikely, but man, I can't believe that's wild.
Yeah, that's what I started thinking. I said, would it be more detrimental? I mean, if they lined up and started acting where they would grow to match the building, yes, but I don't know. It started making me really think about stuff. Yeah. Obviously, statistically, totally improbable. Someone way smarter, like you said, could easily answer that question. But it made me think of like a region like Tokyo How does their building code, they have so many earthquakes and they have these typhoons come through. I mean, I can't believe that there's no way this was the first time that happened.
Yeah. There's also a component of this that's like, earthquake design, a little less in Japan for these lower level 5s is basically a static design. Right. Nothing is going to happen. For us, don't really consider the smaller earthquakes. And it's a ductile design. Your deformation is expected. You're dumping a lot of energy into breaking the building in a very specific way. So there's a comparison there as well. And like, I don't know, I don't really know what to get out of that, but they're very different ways of designing a building. Like, I wonder what the base shear on one of these, just pick some standard building, base shear for the seismic and base shear for the same wind. And summing that up, is that still less than the design earthquake?
Right.
I think it's got to be. I think it's got to be because of the log scale on earthquakes. If Japan is looking at like maximum considered earthquake in the 7-8 range, then that's 32 times 5.
Right.
That's what I'm going with. I'm sticking with that. It's like, that's amazing that happened. It's still probably less total base shear, less total energy into the building.
Yeah, I would agree.
I don't want to leave this hanging because the possibility isn't zero. Japan has a lot of earthquakes. There's a 100% probability in certain regions of Japan that they'll have a magnitude 6 or greater earthquake within 30 years. So assuming we're in that region, we're definitely going to have a 6. And let's look at a wind speed with a 50-year return period. What is the probability that both of these will occur in one day?
The probability is 1 in 2 billion.
Amazing.
So Max, we kind of decided earlier, one of us would pick one, just like the plywood versus OSB talk. This time around, you got nails, I've got screws. I think we just start this whole conversation off with withdrawal values and just end it with that.
Let's say this is when you're going to screw up.
Okay, now
and
we're
I
getting
feel
funny, huh?
like I'm about to nail it.
How long did you spend coming up with that?
I wrote down that as my opening. I wanted to make sure I, had it memorized. So
funny enough, I literally have the NDS at home this weekend. So I started going through it.
Yeah. Did you look at the shear tables?
No one cares about shear, Max. Everyone cares about withdrawal.
Yeah, do you have shear walls or withdrawal walls?
Everything's always in withdrawal.
Hold on. Let's go to the beginning. I want to know the history. Let's start from scratch here.
Yeah, let's learn a little bit about nails, and I'll teach you about screws.
Let me tell you something.
In the beginning,
nails have been around for 5,400 years at least.
Prove it.
Well, when we do our episode in Egypt, we'll dig around because they found some bronze nails back in Egypt. They've been around for a super long time. They were handmade for a really long time. And as you know, the size of a nail is in terms of pennies, right? So you get a 10-penny nail, 8-penny nail, as it's going in your shear wall. That penny actually comes from the cost of the nail, right? So 100 nails cost 8 pennies if they were this size back in 15th century England. But it also went the other way. Nails were so precious that people would just make nails in their house at night and sell them. It would go the other way. Nails could just be money. That's how good they were 200, 300 years ago. They were the bee's knees, the bee's nails.
Now, something funny there. I'll get into screws, but screws actually had the same kind of background with people making these at their house and selling it for quite a bit of money. As we go through evolution and get more sophisticated, that's really where screws came out of. They're trying to find a solution to all the issues nails had.
Huh.
And metal screws, fasteners really started in furniture back in the 14th, mostly the 15th century before it really got into anything else. It was really the late 18th century, mid 19th century that screws really started becoming something. They were only used or created in industrial towns, up and coming to, really industrial places. They're mostly handmade till about, again, the late to mid 18th century. And that's when they came out with a lathe that could lathe the screws.
The 18th century or the 1800s?
It says the 18th century.
Really?
What I found.
So how are they're lathing wrought iron? There was some steel.
It says
it was junk.
It says the first record industrial manufacturer of wood screws was in 1760.
They're
So the
probably
18th
confusing these
century.
with nails. I tell you what, nails.
It literally says wood screws. You're so wrong, Max.
I want to tell you also how valuable nails were before I tell you why that thing was wrong, because this is cool. In early Americas, it was so hard to get nails that people, when they moved, would burn their houses down and collect all the nails. The wood was so plentiful, and probably these houses were junk. But when you'd move away, your final parting would be to burn your house down and gather all the nails up. It was so bad that in Virginia, they passed a law that you weren't allowed to burn your house down before you moved.
That's the most ridiculous thing. It's your house. Burn it down.
All right, but what was I getting back to? Steel in general. This goes to both of us. So steel wasn't really a cost-effective option until 1855, Bessemer. And from my understanding, it wasn't particularly workable either. Went from wrought iron to like some kind of junk steel that wasn't melted quite enough to be free of impurities. So I'm surprised they're able to lathe it, but I believe you. I believe you. Was this a Wikipedia or a Reddit article, maybe?
Oh, I wrote it myself. Yeah, so the first patent for the lathe was 1760, and that was an English patent. And the first U.S. patent was 1836 for a lathe that made screws.
Wow. How did they
And-
drive the screws?
Hand-driven. So actually, that's the funniest thing. I'm glad you bring this up. I think we're going to maybe get into the NDS, the wood code a little bit more here coming up. But the funniest thing is what it says about how to install screws. Just if anyone wants to look this up, this the 2015 NDS 12.1.5.4. The wood screw shall be inserted in its lead hole by turning with a screwdriver or other tool, not by driving with a hammer.
Oh, well,
Literally stated in the code.
it has
which
to happen
I'm kind of
enough.
uncomfortable because I always put my screws in with a hammer.
Yeah, that's weird. I thought it was optional.
So I want to be honest, and I think that's really what we're about on this, this show. Obviously, I want to argue screws all day long with you, Max. But the more I read about the screws, the more difficult it seems to use them. Like having to drill a pilot hole or a lead hole, as they call them in
Yep.
there. That's a lot of work compared to shooting a nail in. And I want to just get to the answer real quick here. I know we have lots to talk about, but screws are just so good in withdrawal.
We talk about lead holes a couple of times, so I think we should clarify. The NDS specifies that a wood screw requires a lead hole depending on the specific gravity of the wood. Most of the wood that we use in construction has a specific gravity under 0.5, which actually doesn't require a lead hole. Anything over 0.5 will.
Where could we even go from here? Give me more history. You got any? What else you got? Do we have types of when we're looking at screws for a building? We got wood screws. They couldn't think of any other types. They don't want anything fun. Before we get into lag and all those big guys.
Sure. So yeah, in wood, you have wood screws and lag screws. You have sheet metal screws, self-tapping steel screws. And then you have like anchors, I guess, anchor bolts that go into concrete. You don't have any nails to do that, but that's okay.
Oh,
I
yeah,
guess
you do.
Gosh, dang it. I was hoping to catch you on that one, and then you were paying attention. Yeah, so really, there's screws that go into every type of material: masonry, wood, concrete, steel, and that's something that's really been kind of being developed in our lifetime, using screws and concrete and masonry. And
I don't want to bore our audience, but just repeat the exact same thing you said, but insert nail. Just won't hold well.
again, they're good in shear,
They're so good in shear.
but that's
And-
about it.
Here's a question for you. What is the steel strength of a screw? Is there a standard?
Yeah, so it's ASTM B18.61. I couldn't tell you this. I think they make a variety of different strengths of screws.
I didn't find this for nails.
Well, it's actually, hold on. No, it's in here. So there is dowel bending yield strength as a limiting factor.
Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to look it up later, and we're going to insert it right here.
I still don't really know, but ASTM 1667 governs the manufacturing of nails, and the only real requirement is a ductility requirement. Steel wires can be made from low carbon, medium low carbon, or medium high carbon. And also, of course, stainless steel is an option, but there isn't a minimum yield. It's a minimum ductility property. And then that was it. Okay. So, Zach, you told me about that neat lathe thing that makes these screws that you're talking about. That's pretty cool. Let me tell you a little bit about the construction of nails. Really, get this thing moving. So, the first automated manufactured nails, known as cut nails, so these were square in cross section. If you see a nail that is square in cross section, it's real old. Unless sometimes they can be made for kind of like to look old on purpose. But these were mid 1800s, looking at about 1830s.
So Max, I was out hiking in Wyoming probably 6 months ago, and I found an old hunting cabin that had square-headed nails that was falling apart in pieces. Put pictures on the Instagram and stuff of that. It was very interesting.
Man, yeah, I bet that's 1800s. These things definitely push into the 1900s, but they totally go out of fashion once you get these things called wire nails. They're not really called wire nails anymore. I think now when you say wire nail, people think of these thin, either little like finishing nails or the type of nails you get in some freshman dorm room construction kit. But wire nail really is just the alternative to a box nail. So these are also called French nails for a time. Nail tip is cut by some blade. They take this long extruded cylinder of steel and press a little head into it. If they're going for some other sort of nail, a ring shank, they'll press rings into it. But most of the nails we use these days are a wire nail.
Something else that, are common between both nails and screws are they all have way different types of not only uses, but coatings. And I think you could probably almost find the same coating for both a screw and a nail. I don't think that there's a lot of differentiation between the two in that sense.
I was seeing things I didn't even know about. There's obviously like hot dip galvanized stuff, but there's a ton of coatings for nails that make them that increase their withdrawal value. So these are things that will melt on impact when they're being driven and then will cool down and create some adhesive. So like a plastic coating might do that. And even some of just the rougher coatings, like a zinc coating, it's just designed to increase the adhesion.
Right.
Are the coatings on screws, do they help with adhesion at all? Or are they just for protection?
For most of what I found is it's really for protection, and it's the use. The screw is so superior in adhering to things. Screws have so much additional surface area from the kind of the helical shape that is built through the screw that you don't need these extra coatings to get something you don't already get. A nail is doing that because it's not as superior as a screw. Do you know what also a screw does with these threads? On a lot of construction sites, when they're trying to close gaps, they'll drill a screw to pick up the other board and suck it tight. Can a nail do that? Let me tell you how the nail is the biggest scam.
Yeah.
In California, OshPod will not allow you to use a nail if it's a toenail connection. It's not allowed.
Were you designing toenail connections? What's wrong with you? Who would do that?
I would never do that because all I'm using is screws.
Oh, man. I will say nails are potentially much, much worse in withdrawal, despite anything I say on this.
Potentially.
Never, ever, ever use a nail in a situation where there's any withdrawal load, more or less.
And the other thing you could argue, and I know you're going to bring this up eventually, so I'm just going to knock it out right now. You're going to say nails are faster to install, so construction-wise, they're more speedy.
You could save a ton of money just in the time of installation. So
not anymore. There's companies out there that have these like fast screwed. You get pretty much a strip of screws, and they're just drilled in, and they go so fast. Simpson has one that you can put in a screw. Maybe not as fast as a nail, but very, very close.
Does it pre-drill for you as required?
No.
But it's required.
The pre-drilling is only required sometimes.
Can you have a screwed shear wall?
Yeah. I wish. I couldn't see why. I guess it's not tested. And
with the shear wall, it's the shank. And it's the ductility.
Yeah. So
right, like the shank is way
is the size of the screw, when you're looking at a screw chart and it's a 1/4 inch, that is the shank width, or that is the width, the total thread width?
Yeah, so it's the thread diameter, not the shank diameter, Max.
Yeah, that makes sense. When you're looking at the shear values in the NDS table, if you compare as close as you can the diameter, tabulated diameter, a nail has 50% greater shear values. And the steel in these is like the same, right? So it's just that the nail is 50% larger.
But if you get to the lag screw, you're just gonna win in everything. But
We weren't going to do lag screws.
pre-drilling to install it correctly is gonna take you a lot more time.
Why don't you just bolt, which is basically like a giant nail with threads?
Because you can't always bolt.
I wouldn't lag screw when you could bolt.
That's a very fair comment.
I don't know where this fits in, but it kind of just occurred to me while I was investigating this. If there's ever an occasion where you need stainless steel nails, they have very small withdrawal values, super duper small.
Yeah.
I wanna tell you about the different types of nails. I hear that you're familiar with this book called the NDS, and when you're looking at the shear wall tables of this book, it gives you 3 types of nails to go by. These are common nail, box nail, and sinker nail. When you're looking at your tabulated values, you get a different penny rating, 8 penny, 6 penny, whatever for your shear wall. And depending on the type of nail that corresponds. So remember, like the penny is almost the amount of steel that goes into it, sort of. Now it really correlates to the length. So the 8 penny nail, is 2 inches, right? So your common nail has a higher diameter than your box or sinker nail. The box nails came around literally assembling boxes with thinner planks of wood, and you had to make sure that the wood didn't split. The sinker nail comes from the same idea, these smaller diameter shanks, but they end up with larger heads, large flat heads, so that you can sink them flush. These are pretty good with drywall. They don't have a really, large, thick head to pound in. They can sink nice and flat with their drywall. So that's why in the NDS table, the common nails can be a smaller penny size in order to get the same shear values. Their diameter ends up being pretty much the same.
But everyone uses drywall screws, Max. No one uses drywall nails.
Nobody makes a shear wall with drywall screws.
I hope not. I mean, there's drywall values.
They're pretty low.
Are those screws or nails?
That's a good point. I don't know, actually.
I'm gonna look them up. Oh, you can use drywall screws.
Really?
Yeah. So let's talk just real quick. I think we kind of figured out what both, your nail, my screw is really what it's good at, So give me some examples, just a few examples of where you've already brought up a couple, but what else do you use nails for in construction? Where else would you find these?
I mean, we mentioned different materials. So let's say you're hitting a piece of wood into some masonry. That is perfectly a great place to use a nail.
You would hand drive a nail into masonry?
Yeah.
And they're not wiggly? They stay pretty well?
Yeah, they stay fairly well. There are soil nails, right? You can use this for wall retaining with gigantic nails if we're going if we're going that far. But I think speed is a big part of it. Nails can be driven very quickly. There are ring shank nails, which have a higher withdrawal value. These are the kind of the two differences that are tabulated by the NDS: smooth shank and ring shank. And then there's a stainless set in there as well. But that I think kind of sums up the use.
Like on a wood building, where would you find? I think most people are going to think what we're really discussing is wood nails, and I think that's kind of the basis of most of what we discuss. Where on a wood building do you see these being used?
You see them from top to bottom, right? So we've got roofing nails, a special short ring shank nail, often with a really big head, maybe a plastic coating. We've got common nails or something very similar, another wire nail attaching the roof sheathing down to the framing. All the framing attachments, any mechanical attachment from framing, any sort of clip is all going to be nailed together, right? You can certainly have nailed flooring, so floor to the joists. it is maybe more common to have glued and screwed is kind of the way to go on flooring to ensure that the nails don't eventually come out. But if you're using something on the floor, definitely ring shank or a high diameter, not for shear, just for withdrawal. Because this is the withdrawal on the nail is simply a friction thing. And then all the way down, all the walls, every wood attachment basically, until you get to your sill plate, is going to be sort of a nail style fastener.
I like it. Something I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but I'm curious to hear. You did design some residential back in the day and some wood buildings. I've heard that a lot of wood buildings, if not a majority of them, will hear popping sounds of the nails popping as the building is changing in moisture content, or should I say the lumber is changing in moisture content. It's coming to equilibrium. You'll hear some popping noises, and sometimes it becomes pretty bad to where the people in the building think that's it's a structural issue. There's been many lawsuits over the last few decades that have had this issue.
I have never heard of that, and I've done a little construction myself, and that has never come up.
I was talking to a wood guy probably about a month ago, and he was like a witness in a trial of a massive wood building that just had crazy popping noises. It sounded on sometimes the order of almost maybe a air rifle or something like that you could hear these popping noises. And it really was a big issue on the structure, or a big issue to the tenants and what they thought, was happening to the structure.
That's interesting. I gotta look into this a little bit more. I don't know about these nail pops.
So anyways, that's another benefit to screws. You don't get these popping noises as your building's going to equilibrium. Only an issue with nails. But I have to give you, nails have their place in construction. I think you bring up some very good points and when they should be used. And I just want to remember all of our listeners that, when you get into a tricky situation, start throwing screws in there because they'll start making things work for you.
Just go to an all steel building.
Max's solution, steel.
There's
no more wood.
Steel.
What's funny is the ongoing joke in my last firm. If anyone ever came up with a problem, and let's say it was like, oh yeah, I'm having issues with like this wood element, they'd be like, why are you using wood? And it was a joke, but it also made so much sense because if you're having an issue and using that material, it's probably maybe not the right material. I know that's not the topic we're discussing, but I always thought that was an interesting comment, is if someone's really having a problem with that material, probably not the right material.
Well, that's wise, Zach.
At the end of the day, Max, I think we're both winners on this one.
Some more than others.
Screws are superior. Now, any of you guys listening, we'd love to hear both from the construction world and the engineering world. Where are you using screws? What do you see screws being best at? And really, on the other end of it, where are you seeing nails being used? I would like to think that the engineering community is coming back a little bit more on the screw side. We'll find out. I'm just guessing here, but the construction industry loves nails with the speed of construction. So we'd love to hear back from you guys, and really, if you have anything to add to this conversation, we'd love to post more about it and keep the conversation going and really hear your guys' opinions. So please reach out to us on Instagram, Facebook, email. If you do like the episodes, please share it with your friends, subscribe, and let us know what you like and what we can do better. And until next week, have a good one.